first great champion of the Olympic 1500 meters, emerged from a remote and unlikely corner of the world in the 1920s. Paavo Nurmi came from Turku in Finland.
If he'd been running 30 years later, he would have been still the best in the world. He was that good. It was what Nurmi did that set the foundations for a lot of great distance running afterwards.
In an era of amateurs, Nurmi was the first to bring a level of professionalism to running. Nurmi arrived at the Paris Olympics in 1924, ready to contest the 1500 meters. 3 3/4 laps of the track, the metric mile, had been a part of the modern games since their inception in Athens in 1896. In the Olympic Stadium, Nurmi began the 1500 meters at a blistering pace, completing the first lap in 58 seconds. It was a tactic designed to kill off the opposition. Nurmi won comfortably and set a new Olympic record. Not content with this victory alone, he would return to the track only 2 hours later to compete in the 5,000 meters.
Several people warned him. They said you shouldn't compete in 2 events at the same day, but he did it.
Incredibly, Nurmi won the 5,000 meters and again set a new Olympic record. But that wasn't the end of Nurmi's achievement. He went on to win 3 more races: the cross-country, the 3,000 meters, and the cross-country team event. 5 gold medals, an Olympic track record that still stands today.
Paavo Nurmi oli täysin ylivoimainen näissä kilpailuissa.
Paavo Nurmi was totally unbeatable in these events. The other runners barely made it to the finish. Some of them staggered and fell at the finishing line. Paavo just said they trained poorly.
And it was Nurmi's training in the Finnish countryside that held the key to his success.
He took his training to a different level. He was certainly training harder by a distance than anybody else. And he really paved the way in terms of just the quantity of what he did for the athletes that subsequently came through.
Nurmi followed a regime which became known as interval training, where he would alternate between running at a fast and then at a steady pace.
He also realized that in races, sheer endurance was not enough, so he systematically trained for speed as well.
Nurmi carried a stopwatch while he trained, so he could time the different speeds which he ran.
He always had a stopwatch in his hand. The stopwatch and Nurmi were an inseparable pair.
Nurmi even brought his stopwatch into competitions. In his record-breaking 1500 meters victory, he can be seen with the watch in his right hand. Nurmi was the star of a golden generation of Finnish runners. At the Paris Olympics, they won every event from the 1500 meters to the marathon, earning them the nickname, the Flying Finns. Running had become popular in Finland after the country gained independence from Russia in 1917, and a new sense of national identity was forged through the success of Finnish athletes.
A sort of cult of the runner evolved. It was considered that Finns had what it took to become the best runners of all. This myth of the runner was linked to an older ideal of the Finnish national character, as humble, hard-working, God-fearing, and prepared to sacrifice everything for the country.
Paavo Nurmi was believed to be the embodiment of this unique Finnish ideal, known as sisu, literally meaning guts. courage against the odds.
Finns consider Sisu to be something that no other nation has, something that has enabled Finns to resolve difficult situations, whether in war or sport. Sisu is willpower, the ability to make almost superhuman efforts on the spur of the moment.
And this could be seen in Paavo Nurmi. He was like Mr. Sisu. Men who have Sisu don't generally smile without good reason, and Paavo Nurmi was a very expressionless runner.
But Paavo Nurmi's Olympic story would end prematurely. In 1932, on the eve of the Los Angeles Olympics, Nurmi was caught receiving money for running in competitions in America, breaking the amateur rules of the time. He was banned from competing in the Games for life. With the ban, Nurmi's Olympic dream was over. But in 1952, when the Games were held in Finland, he raced into the Helsinki Stadium at the age of 55 to light the Olympic torch.
It was a symbol for Finland because he was the big star, the big running star in the first years of the country's independence. And it was natural for him to lit the Olympic torch.
Paavo Nurmi won a record 9 gold medals and became the first great champion of the Olympic 1500 meters by dedicating himself to a solitary and systematic training regime. But with his retirement, Finland would no longer dominate the Games. Eight years after Nurmi departed the arena, a young runner from Australia arrived at the 1960 Rome Olympics, armed with a new strategy to win the 1500 meters. Herb Elliott had only the year before smashed the 1500 meters world record, and now had his eyes on his first Olympic gold.
It was absolutely wild. There was a wonderful atmosphere of excitement around the place, yeah, which really sharpened the nerves up a bit.
But unlike Nurmi, who trained alone, Herb Elliott was coached by an eccentric and brilliant trainer. Percy Cerruti had a special plan for winning Olympic gold.
I could go on for an hour telling you stories about Percy, his volatility, his crazy sense of humour, his eccentricities and all that sort of stuff. He wasn't a typical coach at all.
Percy Cerruti was born in 1895 and he got a nervous breakdown in 1937. He made his way back to life by walking, eating simple raw food, training, running, lifting weights, and he tried to qualify for the Olympics in 1948, but he was too old, he was 53 years old. So he wanted to train athletes.
It was 3 years before the Rome Olympics that Elliott first met the unorthodox coach who convinced him to follow his training regime.
And he had just a pair of white shorts on, and he started talking about being able to fly, and he flapped his arms up and down. If he'd taken off, I would have been very impressed, but he stayed on the ground like the rest of us. So I thought he was a bit crazy, but he stirred me, he inspired me, he challenged me, and from that moment on, really, my career was set.
Just minutes before the Rome final, Cerruti gave a last-minute instruction to Elliott.
He said, now when you get into the back straight, I'll be in the crowd and I'll have the Australian Olympic cow and I'll be waving it like this for two things. One, if somebody's hot on your hammer and you've got to really watch out, or two, you've got a chance of breaking the world record. I was in a blurred state of mind and only half listened to what he was saying. At the instant the gun went, this light blue singer, I had no idea who he was or even what country he was from. shot out like a frightened rabbit. In fact, for a moment I thought maybe the starter's gun had shot him in the arse or something like that. He set the pace for maybe the first lap and a half. So I just sat in and, as I usually did, just got a position about third or fourth, and we got to the point where I was ready to make my move in the strategy that my coach and I had planned. You'd expect some sort of voice to come up inside you at that stage saying, this is what you've been waiting for, this is the moment you've been training for, this is the time you're going to show these guys what you're made of. And this little voice came up into my head, and it didn't say that at all. It said, Herb, you're buggered.
It was a crunch moment, but Elliott's mind became flooded with images of Cerruti's training camp on the beach at Portsea in Australia.
You really need a poet to describe Portsea. I mean, it's a very beautiful part of the world with limestone cliffs, the Southern Ocean, white sand beaches. Percy believed you could absorb the beauty and the strength of nature into your system to help you with your running.
It wasn't just the environment that Cerruti believed was important. He was the first coach to put his athlete on a strict diet of natural foods.
In those days in Australia, we had meat and 3 veg. That's what was put on the plate every night. Percy was a great believer in the life principle. He said you have to eat food that still retains the life principle. Don't eat processed food. Things like muesli, bran and all that sort of stuff, which we were used to being fed to chickens. It was so unique in Australia in those days for people to eat this stuff.
Fueled by daily raw foods, Elliott trained barefoot, sprinting up steep sand dunes at Portsea.
The whole concept of training was not get your heart rate up or get your lungs operating more efficiently or get your muscles finely tuned. The whole basis for your training was mental toughness, being outside your comfort zone and pushing yourself to your absolute limit.
It was an arduous program that Cerruti designed to break the pain barrier and develop a mental toughness which Elliott would need to win Olympic gold.
Pain's good for you. Pain is a cleanser. Pain is something which helps you grow. So there was all this encouragement to really train exceptionally intensely. The intensity meant that you were a pretty formidable competitor when you got onto the track because you trained that way.
In Rome, with 500 metres to go, Elliott now drew on all the mental toughness his training had developed to power himself into the lead.
I was full of fear at the stage of the game. The cards are on the table. Somebody's going to come up on you. You've got a real bat on your hands.
As Elliott entered the final 100 metres, he caught a glimpse of Cerruti waving the Australian towel, just as he said he would.
I thought, oh my God, what is that supposed to mean? I couldn't quite remember what the reason it was. And I figured out that whatever it was, I had to run faster.
Into the home straight, Elliott increasing speed, almost arrogantly disregarding the rest of the field.
Elliott broke his own world record. He also finished an astonishing 18 metres ahead of the rest of the runners.
Got there first, won the gold medal and broke the world record. And I do remember at the moment of striking the line, it was not one of elation or one of joy, it was just sheer bloody relief that the whole thing was over.
Meanwhile, Percy Cerruti, who had leapt onto the track as Elliott crossed the line, had been arrested by the Italian police, unaware that he was the coach who had masterminded this world record-breaking victory. Elliott's outstanding performance was the only time that a new world record would be set in the Olympic 1500 metres. After Rome, runners focused on winning Olympic gold rather than setting new records.